Question number 36. For a given matrix, let Ri denote the sum of all entries in its ith row, and let Cj denote the sum of all entries in its jth column. How many 3 by 3 matrices with non-negative integer entries are there such that R1 equal to R2 equal to C1 equal to C2 equal to 2 and R3 equal to C3 equal to 1? And the options are 12, 11, 13 and 14. Now one thing you should understand is by Ri and Cj we actually mean the columns and rows. Okay, so that is what the usual meaning is. So we mean the entire vector, either the row vector or the column vector. But as far as this sum is concerned, they are not calling Ri and Cj the rows. Okay, in fact they are calling these as the sum of all entries in the respective row or respective column. So the usual meaning is that these are matrices or column vectors or row vectors, but here they are numbers or scalars. Okay, that is the first thing that you should understand. And the other thing is that in solving this problem, your approach is going to play an important role. Because I tried to solve this problem with a couple of different approaches, but they did not work. Okay, at least they did not give me any definite answer. So the approach is important. Okay, so let me now tell you the approach that worked. Initially, I started with the condition that R3 and C3 should be equal to 1. Okay, now because all entries of these matrices are non-negative integers, Aij should always be greater than or equal to 0. Yes. And then what I did is I made a list of all possibilities of 3 by 3 matrices wherein R3 and C3 are equal to 1. Okay, so we will start with the simplest possibility. Let's call it P1. Okay, wherein R3 is 1 0 0 and C3 is also 1 0 0. Okay, so that is possibility 1. And note that we are currently not working on the first 4 entries of this matrix. Okay, and same thing with the other. Let's now talk about the second possibility. Let's call it P2. Okay, so in P2 what I've done is I've not changed R3 of P1, but I have interchanged the rows, okay, of P1. So I have performed the operation R12 on P1, okay, so that we will get a new possibility. Let's call it P2, and that is 0 1 0. Now you can see that the rows have been interchanged, rows 1 and 2. And now you can guess what possibility 3 is going to be. Here we are going to interchange the columns of P1. Okay, so the third column will remain as it is, 1 0 0. But the third row is now going to change. Initially it was 1 0 0 and now we are having 0 1 0. Okay, and the fourth possibility is now to perform both R12 and C12 on P1. Okay, so if you perform those operations, that is interchanging the first 2 columns and interchanging the first 2 rows of P1, then eventually you will end up with the third row as 0 1 0 and the third column as 0 1 0. Okay, now these 4 possibilities are indeed connected to each other, but the fifth possibility is distinct in the sense that it has no connection as far as these arrangements are concerned with the first 4. Okay, so let's call it P5, and I will tell you what P5 is. In P5, A33 itself is equal to 1. So that forces us to take all the other entries in R3 or third row and third column to 0. Okay, so 0 0 1 and 0 0 1. So these are the 5 possibilities where of 3 by 3 matrices with non-negative integer entries, provided that sum of all elements in their third row and third column is equal to 1. So there are at least 5 matrices now, correct? And as I said, because P1, P2, P3 and P4 are connected to each other by the elementary row and column transformations, it is enough to talk about one of them and decide on the total number based on that, correct? So let's consider P1 now and analyze it. Okay, now previously I had not considered these 4 entries. Now let us call them A, B, C, D. Okay, and let's go back to the problem, to those conditions which we did not use or which we have not used so far, which are R1 equal to R2 equal to C1 equal to C2 equal to 2. Okay, so let's now bring in those things into play. Okay, now if we apply the condition on the first row, then we will get A plus B plus 1 equal to 2. Yes, see, that gives A plus B equal to 1. And if we apply the same condition on the first column, then A plus C plus 1 is again 2, so A plus C equal to 1. And then we can also get the other 2 equations, B plus D equal to 2 and C plus D equal to 2. Okay, so you will then get a linear system of linear equations in 4 unknowns, but again that is not advisable. So what you have to do is you have to list off all possibilities of the values of A, B, C, D. That is much easier to do than this, okay, because A, B, C, D also have these constraints, correct? Yes. Now what I did is I started with the simplest possible value of A, okay, or the smallest possible value of A I should say, and that is 0. Yes. Now if A is 0, then B and C must be 1 from these 2 equations. Yes, now if B and C are equal to 1, then from these 2 equations what will we get? We will get D equal to 1. Yes, so one possibility of A, B, C, D is 0 1 1 1. Okay, and now what I did is I went to the next possibility of A, that is A equal to 1. Now if A is equal to 1, then automatically C and B become 0, okay, using these 2 equations, and then D will be equal to 2, correct? So then we have got 2 matrices within possibility 1. Okay, one is 0 1 1 1 1 0 1 0 0, and the other one is 1 0 1 then 0 0 oh sorry 0 2 0, yeah, D is there, right? 0 2 0 and then 1 0 0. Okay, so there are 2 matrices within the possibility 1, right? Now why is A equal to 2 not possible? Because the moment you put A equal to 2, then R1 no longer remains 2 and so does C1, because you already have 1s here. Okay, so within possibility 1 there are 2 matrices, and now our relations among P1, P2, P3 and P4 will help us in determining the possibilities, or I should say sub possibilities within P2, P3 and P4. Each of those possibilities can be obtained from these 2 matrices of P1. Okay, and for P2 we did the operation R12 on P1, so there will be 2 corresponding matrices obtained by interchanging rows 1 and 2. See, and because these entries are different, the matrices are going to be different from the equality of matrices. Okay, so 2 matrices for P2, 2 matrices for P3 where you interchange the first 2 columns, Okay, and for the fourth possibility, that is you perform C12 R12 in succession or R12 and C12 in succession, that doesn't matter, you will get two more matrices. Okay, now having obtained these 8 matrices, let us now consider the last possibility, that is possibility 5. Okay, wherein we have 0 0 1 and 0 0 1 there, right? Yes, so 8 possibilities we have already talked about, and now we will consider the possibility 5 and talk about the values of A, B, C and D. Okay, yes. Now here, if you look at R1, R2 and C1, C2, okay, the rows and columns, then the conditions tell us that A plus B equal to 2, A plus C equal to 2, yes, or B equal to C. Okay, then C plus D equal to 2 and D plus D equal to 2, implying A equal to D. Okay, again 4 equations, 4 unknowns, but again we are not going to solve this particular system of linear equations. We will start with A equal to 0. Okay, so if A is equal to 0, then B and C must be 2. Okay, and that forces us to take D as 0. Okay, and if you take A equal to 1, then everything else becomes 1. It just follows from these 4 equations. Okay, and here you are allowed to take A equal to 2, which was not possible previously, right? Previously it was not possible because we were having ones here, so we had to exclude that possibility, but now we can take it into consideration. Okay, so A equal to 2, that will give us B equal to 0, C equal to 0, because A plus B is 2 and B equal to C, and D again equal to 2. Okay, so how many matrices did you now get? 3 matrices? Yes. So 8 matrices previously, 2 corresponding to each of the 4 possibilities, plus possibility 5, 3 matrices. So total number of such matrices is 11, and that is option B. Yes. Okay. Yes. Now let me also tell you the approach that I tried, which did not work. Okay, and that approach went something like this. I just considered A, B, C, D. Okay, and then I was forced to write this and element as 2 minus A minus B, this as 2 minus C minus D, this as 2 minus A minus C, and this as 2 minus B minus D, and I wrote this as E, but I knew that 2 minus A minus B plus 2 minus C minus D plus E should be equal to 1, isn't it? So then that gave me 4 minus A plus B plus C plus D plus E equal to 1. Okay, or E equal to A plus B plus C plus D plus 1 minus 4. Okay, see, and after this I found it very difficult to arrive at the total number of matrices. Okay, so you can give it a try, but for me the later approach actually worked, which I explained you just now. Okay, so that is question 36. Question number 42. How many functions f defined from the set of natural numbers to the set of natural numbers satisfy LCM of f of n comma n minus HCF of f of n comma n less than 5? Here LCM denotes the least common multiple and HCF denotes the highest common factor. Okay, now I have used the method of elimination of the options here. Okay, let's first consider the identity function. That is, let us assume that f of n is equal to n. Okay, so every time you input n, it will return you n. And we know that LCM of two numbers which are equal is equal to the number, and so is their GCF, or the GCD as it is sometimes called, or HCF. Okay, so if you subtract LCM of f of n comma n minus HCF of f of n comma n, that will be equal to 0, which is less than 5. So we have got one such function, that is the identity function, for which LCM of fn and n minus HCF of fn comma n is less than 5, it is equal to 0. Okay, so we have eliminated the possibility B, that there are no such functions. Okay, now what I have done is I have defined another function g1 of n. Okay, now I have defined g1 of n in such a way that I let g1n to be equal to f of n for n greater than or equal to 2, but I let g1 of 1 to be 2. Okay, see, now even this is allowed because the LCM of 2 and 1 is 1. Oh, sorry, not 1, 2. And GCD of 2 and 1 is 1. So if you subtract, you will get 1, which is less than 5. And this is a different function now than the identity function, because for identity function, f of 1 is actually equal to 1, and currently g1 of 1 is 2. Okay, and similarly you can also define yet another function, but there is no need to do that. We have successfully ruled out option C, that is, there exists only one function with this particular requirement or condition. Okay, so now the question boils down to whether there are finitely many such functions or infinitely many such functions. Okay, now to answer that question, we need to think in the following manner. Let us try to convert this inequality into equations. Okay, in the problem they are saying LCM minus HCF less than 5. I have just shifted HCF to the other side. Okay, and we know that all of them are going to be natural numbers now, isn't it? Yes. So if we want LCM to be less than 5 plus HCF, then possibility 1 is LCM is 1 plus HCF. Possibility 2 is LCM equals 2 plus HCF. Possibility 3 is LCM is 3 plus HCF, and possibility 4 is it is LCM plus 4. LCM is 4 plus HCF. Okay. And now I have tried to prepare a list of all the pairs, all ordered pairs of numbers, natural numbers, which satisfy these individual equations. Okay, so for LCM equal to 1 plus HCF, there are only two possibilities, 1 2 and 2 1. You can check it now for yourselves. If you want LCM to be greater than HCF by 2, then you have 1 3, 3 1, and this time you also have 2 4 and 4 2. Okay, you can again verify this for yourself. Okay, possibility 3, LCM is 3 plus HCF. We have 1 4 4 1 3 6 and 6 3. Okay, see, now by the rule, this difference between numbers can at the most be 4. It cannot be greater than 5, right? Because otherwise this relation will no longer hold. Okay, so intuitively now you may have understood that this particular list of pairs that we are making is going to be a finite set. Okay, which eventually leads to option A, but we'll now complete the discussion. Let's consider the fourth possibility now, that LCM is 4 plus HCF. Here how many pairs will be there? Start with the least possible natural number 1, so 1 5 and 5 1, then 2 6 6 2. Now unfortunately there is no such pair with 3. Okay, so we have to go to 4 now. Okay, 4 8 and 8 4. Now after this, when you start talking about 5, okay, although you can link it to 1, there is no other pair possible, okay, which satisfies these any one of these four possibilities, which also means that there is no pair of numbers which satisfies this particular inequality. Okay, so having made this exhaustive list of ordered pairs satisfying this particular inequality, after this we have to stick to the identity function if at all we want to define those functions. Okay, which means because these ordered pairs are finite in number, and there is only identity function, the other thing that at our disposal, it forces us to discard the option infinitely many, and hence we can say that there are more than one, okay, in fact more than two functions, but definitely finitely many functions and not infinitely many functions. Okay, so that is question 42. Question number 43. Let a and b be distinct positive real numbers whose geometric mean is equal to a to the power t minus 99 plus b to the power t minus 99 divided by a to the power t minus 100 plus b to the power t minus 100, then t must be equal to 99, 99 upon 2, 199 upon 2 and d 199. Now the very first thing that I have done in this problem is I have gotten rid of these large numbers 99 and 100. Okay, so I introduced a new variable called alpha, or new unknown I should say, and alpha is basically the arithmetic mean of 99 and 100 including the t part. Okay, so the first power that makes its appearance is t minus 99 and the second power is t minus 100. So first I have found out the arithmetic mean of these two numbers. Okay, so then that gave me t minus 199 upon 2, and this is alpha. Okay, this is what I am calling alpha. See, now what this does is this allows us to write the original expression, okay, in such a form wherein the maximum power that at least you can see is 1 by 2. Okay, the variable ta. Correct, and this is in a much better form to simplify than our original expression. Okay, so let's now do that. They're saying that geometric mean is equal to this, and we know how to find the geometric mean. It is root of AB. Yes, and then this is just plain simplification. Okay, so what I have done now is, instead of a raised to alpha plus 1 upon 2, which was originally a raised to t minus 99. Okay, now because alpha is t minus 199 upon 2, to get this 99 we must add 1 upon 2 to negative 199 upon 2. Okay, and same thing with b. Okay, sorry, not b, the power t minus 100. So if we have alpha minus 1 upon 2, originally it is t minus 100. Okay, so having substituted t minus 199 upon 2 as alpha, okay, to get that remaining power we must subtract half from negative 199 upon 2. Alright, after that you just separate the powers of a and b, alpha and root. Okay, so it then becomes a raised to alpha into root a plus b raised to alpha into root b in the numerator, and a raised to alpha upon root a and b raised to alpha upon root b in the denominator, obviously because of the negative signs here. Then you cross multiply. Okay, so the first term will be root of ab into a to the power alpha upon root a goes. The second term will be root of ab into b to the power alpha upon root b, so root b gets cancelled. And so our new LHS is root b a to the power alpha plus root a b to the power alpha. RHS is still this particular numerator. Okay, yes. Now equating these two things, we will get our answer. How? You observe that a raised to alpha is present on both sides, and so is b raised to alpha. Okay, so now we can think of collecting a to the power alpha terms, bringing them on one side and repeating the same process for b to the power alpha, and that's what I have done here. I have brought a to the power alpha terms to the left hand side, so inside the bracket we will get root b minus root a. Same thing with b to the power alpha, but now this time on the right hand side. Okay, so again you will see this factor root b minus root a popping up. Okay, now as a is not equal to b, root of a cannot be equal to root of b. Okay, they have mentioned this, that a and b are unequal or distinct. So that allows us to cancel root b minus root a. Yes, so a to the power alpha is b to the power alpha, or 8 upon b to the power alpha is 1. Okay, now from this relation, what can we conclude? Because a and b are distinct, a upon b can never be equal to 1. Okay, so if a upon b is never equal to 1, any number whose alpha power is 1 implies that alpha must be equal to 0. Okay, yes. So once alpha is 0 is obtained, we can go back to our substitution. Okay, this one, that alpha is t minus 199 upon 2. Okay, and just equate t minus 199 by 2 with alpha. Okay, so that gives us t as 199 upon 2, and that is option C. Right, a very simple problem, but I think the simplification part, or this part, gets further simplified if you introduce this new variable. Okay, because that simply reduces the powers, the large numbers that make their appearances in the powers. Okay, so here previously we were having 99 and 100, and now we are just having the number 1 by 2. Okay.